for tuning into another Dolphins podcast. Wildcard Weekend is in the books and only 8 teams remain in the hunt for the Lombardi Trophy. Meanwhile, Miami has started to make some coaching staff changes and Skylar Thompson, yes, the guy who couldn't handle a snap and had to be taken out of the ball game, that Skylar Thompson has found a new team. But before we get into all the news surrounding the Miami Dolphins, Josh, how's your Wildcard Weekend?
It was good, man. It was stress-free, I guess, unless you did bet on some parlays. And I think, like everyone, I had some bets going, and you come ever so slightly, ever so close, and then you want to do it again the next day. So, it was nice just to be able to sit back and enjoy some good football. But I don't know about you, Jake, but watching those games, it definitely sank in how far off the Dolphins are from being able to compete with some of those teams. To be completely honest.
You didn't feel like you were, just looking into the window, peering in, seeing everyone sitting down at the table and thinking, yeah, this Dolphins team belongs there. That didn't go through your mind at all?
No, and in fact, I kind of just looked at that Broncos game and was just thinking, okay, this is probably exactly how it would have went down if the Dolphins made it. So,
no, Tyreek would have dropped Troy Franklin's 50-yard touchdown. Don't forget.
Okay, so he would have got blown out. It would have been a lot worse than that, probably. Okay, you're right. He would have dropped that thing. He has that wrist injury, of course.
Oh, man, strong start. Man, I'm actually feeling pretty good. It was a fun weekend, and what a physical weekend, right? I think that's the thing that stuck out to me, and people are instantly going to take this and start running in a direction with it. But Josh, what stuck out to me is that up until Monday night, which, I mean, Matthew Stafford, he's like the last of the former generation. It kind of feels like he finished the game with 2 carries for, I think it was -1 yards, which I think translates to a couple kneel downs if I was really to put things together. But Josh, postseason thoughts, the biggest thing that stuck out to me, the winning quarterback in every other playoff game except for Monday night had at least 35 rushing yards. Stroud, 6 for 42. Jackson, 15 for 81. Josh Allen, 8 for 46. Jalen Hurts, 6 for 36. And then you had Jaden Daniels, who went 13 for 36. Jaden Daniels, fun fact, was born the last time the Miami Dolphins won a playoff game. Josh, I'm not trying to point any discussion here, but I think it's when you reach the playoffs, I think the style of football compared to like week 7 through week 11 is just so damn different. And what I saw happening is it wasn't about the quarterbacks that could do everything very well. It seemed to me like the best way to keep the offense going, it wasn't all these big plays. Hell, Curtis Samuel, man, had the longest touchdown of the week, I think, at 55 yards. Curtis Samuel, Albert Wilson, pretty much. But what I saw is it was quarterbacks who didn't have to be fantastic at everything, but it just felt like when you look at these guys, even like Stroud and Jaden Daniels, you have to be able to do everything at least a little bit, it seems like.
Absolutely, and I think it's kind of just the way the game's evolving, right? If you can have that quarterback that can also rush, up the middle for 1 yard, right, Jake? We just need 1 yard here in Miami. We just need that 1 yard. But when you have a guy that, a Jaden Daniels, a Lamar Jackson, who like legitimately can get involved in that running, even Josh Allen, I mean, it definitely changes the game. So for as much as we were hoping that Slim Tua would be able to do some of those things, it was more so what he did when he got outside of the pocket, right? Not being able to get down and things like that, prevented him from maybe having that element to his game. But when you're watching those guys, Josh Allen as an absolute alien out there, Lamar Jackson, those guys are in an entirely different stratosphere. So I can see some good to take away from it, but at the same time, I'm sitting there just watching, wondering, can Tua do those things that you see a Josh Allen do? Can he put that team on his back and, like you mentioned, scramble when the game's on the line and get that yardage, and not implode, get taken one hit and it's over. So, damn, dude, good quarterback play. Yeah, exactly.
Don't even have to label it like a 20-yard rush or anything. Just like, hey, I can pick up 3 yards and get a first down here. Let's do it and move on. I just looked it up too. Tua had a total of 49 rushing yards this season. And Josh, I don't necessarily know if this is the best season to really look at it. Like we thought this was going to be speedy Tua, but you get the concussion and all of a sudden he comes back. There was the I learned don't get concussions, and it's all about sliding and not scrambling. And then the hip injury too, man. You think about when that happened against the Houston game, that started to limit him. So he only had 49 rushing yards for the total season, high of 17 in week 2 against the Buffalo Bills. And then he didn't exceed 13 rushing yards past November. And then I just kind of plucked out some other games, 28 rushing yards on 3 attempts versus the Chargers in 2022, 29 rushing yards on 4 attempts in 2021 versus the Falcons, 38 rushing yards on 5 attempts at the end of the 2021 season against the Patriots, which is actually his career high. And thinking about that game specifically, that seemed like that was maybe like the FU Brian Flores game in a sense, because it was right after they got kicked out of the playoffs because of the Titans. It was the final game to Flores. The Dolphins did beat the Patriots in the game, so you wonder if that was like super hungry Tua. And then 35 rushing yards on 7 attempts against the Cardinals as a rookie. Josh, not like we don't like that's kind of the key here. We don't need a rushing quarterback. You don't need someone who can run the ball 15 times a game, 10 times a game. That's not necessary. But I just keep looking ahead to next year, and I'm trying to think of the different answers the Miami Dolphins have, and God, it just doesn't feel like it's enough. Like when you see how these offenses just consistently move the ball, and when the Dolphins are doing the same screen to 8-chan or the toss crack that goes for -4 yards. I mean, dude, CJ Stroud, did you see how they turned? They were losing 6-0 in that game. CJ Stroud, he went back to ball was snapped, ball like bounced off him, I think, and it started scurrying around 5 yards. He hauled his ass over there, picked up the ball, did a sick pirouette, and then threw for a first down, and the rest was history. Like, it's not fair to ask someone to do these things, but that's what you need to do to have these debates in week 6, 7, and like still are so frustrating. You need to be able to do these different things. You need to be Superman.
You have to, or at least be able to do a little bit of what Superman can do. And I mean, it's crazy, man, to sit there and watch some of those guys and just wonder how far can the Dolphins go, and it's a little bit demoralizing when you just signed your quarterback, and let's be honest, man, the best quarterback, everyone loves to say it, the best quarterback since Marino. That doesn't, I don't know that means anything when you got those guys, like you mentioned, that can extend plays and do those superhuman things to win games for their team. I would say the one thing, Jake, and you mentioned it, going back to the beginning of this, the type of football that is played in the playoffs, it's just complete opposite of what the Dolphins are, right? We're that finesse team that, get the ball out quick. We're scared to hit people, scared to tackle, scared to get gritty. And these teams are out here just running the ball, smash mouth, old school style football. So it's not all into a Tagovailoa. We need that offensive line. We need the trenches built up. We know what we need. But I just feel like even when that comes, is it going to be enough to be able to compete against some of these other guys? And every week as the season progresses, as we see the best teams continue to move forward, it just leaves you wondering, are the Dolphins closer than we were X amount of years ago? I don't know, man.
And that's kind of where I think this is a good time to tie a bow on this argument. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Josh, those are the big three, especially in the AFC. I don't think you can debate that. Now, if we wanted to argue, and we could, our listeners do, those who love Tua, you can argue, yeah, he's in the same tier as Stroud, 100%. He's in the same tier as Jaden Daniels, 100%. Like same quarterback range. The issue is those guys are in their first and second year, and we just paid this dude to be $50 million and continue to get better. That's going to be such a hard thing to figure out moving forward, how he can continue to get better with the limitations that have been established. Josh, any final thoughts on Wildcard Weekend? They took it super out of it, which is kind of depressing. And my bad, again, I'm still for Tua, but I mean, I just look at last weekend and I just look at all the different answers all these defenses had and had me thinking different ways. But Josh, I want you to have the final word here.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is it's kind of a little bit sickening, the way we are on social media, and I'm just as guilty, but the way we kind of just are almost praying for the downfall of some of these young quarterbacks, right? Justin Herbert slips up. Everyone wants to jump on him. Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa when it happens. So it's not all on the quarterback, but it's just crazy, how much we, from an outsider's perspective, fans, the analysts, things like that, focus on that quarterback position when we know it's so much more than just that position that it takes to win games. So hopefully next year at this time, Jake, maybe they bring back the super wild card and we can finally again be back in the playoffs, and hopefully they're not setting that clock to the 26th after the hour. What happens, Jake, when they get to 60? Do they just start over again? Like, I don't even want to get into that. I thought about that one time and I'm like, dude, don't even get into that.
You bring up a good point, Josh. You need more than a quarterback to win a game, but we saw firsthand, specifically weeks 3 through 7, that a quarterback can most certainly lose you a football game. And so the Dolphins parted ways with Skylar Thompson. He was on the active roster, he was on the practice squad. And basically the best explanation I have is just because he moved around so much, cut, added, his practice squad contract came to an end at the beginning of the week. Merrick Brave wrote a good article on the Finsider about it. And Josh thought that'd be the last we'd be talking about Skylar Thompson, at least for a little while. But no, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and Skylar Thompson, baby. We have a 3-headed monster in Pittsburgh. Steelers, coming off that loss to Baltimore, announced that Skylar Thompson has signed a contract with the team. Man, this caught me off guard.
It caught me off guard too, and I had to make sure because there are different social media accounts going around. Everyone has a blue check nowadays. I think his agents were like Sports Trust Advisors. I'm like, that sounds like the most shady. Like that sounds like some crypto sports agency. So I was like, did someone really sign Skylar Thompson? So I mean, they did. The Pittsburgh Steelers signed Skylar Thompson. I think Justin Fields is a free agent. I don't know the stats on Russell Wilson,
I
but
think they both are.
they must have seen enough out of Skylar Thompson to at least have him in there as a camp arm, right? I mean, I'm laughing thinking about that, but in a way, I'm kind of glad he signed with them because I could absolutely see the Dolphins bringing him back and him finding a way back out in the field. So, thank you, Skylar Thompson, for what you brought us. Right, he did get us a little. He had something to do with that playoff game, right? He at least they snapped the ball to him. He was part of that game, and the Dolphins got as close as they have in X amount of years of winning a playoff game. But I'm okay seeing him go, and I'm interested to see if he does do anything with the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Because, like you said, man, we thought we were not going to be talking about Skylar Thompson maybe ever again, and here we are, one of the first signings of the is it even off season? Like that's the first thing the Steelers did after they lost, almost is go sign Skylar Thompson.
We need Skylar, man.
We need him. The sky's the limit.
Dude, that being a fly on the wall, it's like, yeah, dude, we just got canned by Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, our divisional rival, like tough team. We need some more bite in our team. We need some competitive nature. I think that's Skylar Thompson guy. And dude, the NFL season is so long. Like I was talking I forgot about the game where Tua came back and they were up. I even forgot who they were playing against, but they were up. They have Skylar come in just to snap the ball and run out the clock. Fumbles the ball, he goes the other way for a touchdown. You got to bring Tua back in. That's unacceptable. That is incredibly unacceptable that he came back even after that, Josh. And you mentioned the playoff game. The Skylar Thompson story needs to be studied. Just he was never like good, but like the inability to use him as a rushing quarterback. He's this big, lanky, like awkward guy, and you're like, yeah, man, let's draft him in the 7th round over Brock Purdy, who is a timing type quarterback. Like, very weird. I'm not trying to gripe there, but it just seems like, man, this is another issue with the Dolphins. And this is like my biggest fear going into the offseason. This is another scenario where Chris Grier just does not see what's going on. I don't even know if I want to blame Mike McDaniel for this, but I mean, either you have no idea what's going on and you're just scrolling Instagram and you got to deal with Skylar Thompson and all this nonsense. Snoop Huntley saying, hey, it was cold and that's why I fumbled footballs. While you got Mike White sitting there on the corner on the Buffalo Bills active 53-man roster, just going to the next round of the playoffs. This is what Chris Grier, I wanted to close this here, Josh, and I want to get your thoughts about this. Obviously, we drafted Skylar here 3 years ago. We saw some promise. He won the backup job this spring. But that said, we were in on a number of top-flight backup quarterbacks in the league. That's a position we'll always focus on, and it will be a position that we'll focus on this offseason. I will tell you that every stone will be unturned at the position, including the draft. Josh, what were your thoughts just kind of putting those two stories together?
Yeah, I mean, first, man, you said do you blame Chris Grier? And I do think I got to give a little bit of blame to Mike McDaniel because I keep thinking, man, this is that quarterback this is the only quarterback that he drafted since he's been here. Like that, I feel like you got to give him at least another swing at it. But I'm okay seeing Skylar Thompson. It is kind of funny that he was at some point the guy that would come in those situations. And that to me seems like almost a fireable offense. And here we are again, they're getting another chance at this thing. So Skylar Thompson, you needed a better quarterback than that. I think Snoop Huntley outperformed him, but I still feel like, man, if Tua goes down, you need something more than Snoop Huntley if you want to stay afloat in the AFC, as we've seen. So I'm good with Snoop Huntley as that third guy. Excited to see what the Dolphins, have up their sleeves because Chris Grier can talk till he's blue in the face, but they got to go out there. Yeah, they got to go out there and they got to get a sleep. Yeah, they are sleeveless. They got to go out there and they got to find a QB2 because you can't rely again on Tua. As much as you love him when he's healthy, there's more of him. There's more questions than there are answers.
I think Chris Grier also cited salary cap space and compensatory picks.
Yeah.
And that is just so unacceptable when you build your offseason around future 3rd round picks. Josh, that like
they don't even become third round picks then, right? Like what the
Christian Wilkins signs the most insane contract in history and he didn't even get a 3rd round pick because of his injury. That banking on 3rd round picks, Josh. That's where we're at. Our promise is 3rd round picks. We can't build a team for this year because we need a 3rd round pick in the future because we traded one for Jalen Wright. I don't know how we keep having it's the same conversation, but man, like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like it's unacceptable that we're sitting here like, yeah, man, we have an injury prone quarterback. We know that, Skylar Thompson, we made it through with him last year. Obviously we know how bad he is. Like you see it, we see it. We know that we should have upgraded there. But we're going to stick with it because we need a 3rd round compensatory pick because I traded for Bradley Chubb and Tyreek Hill and all these other things. It's making me sick.
Yeah, and I mean, we say we're not going to keep talking about it, but this is what we're going to do all offseason, right?
All
I was going
season.
to tell you to calm down, but we're going to just keep getting each other fired up because you're talking like you're saying it yourself, man. Like that's what you went into this season with, and in hindsight, it was just so silly because we knew what Skylar Thompson was, but dude, they have one last chance from the way it looks, and I'm tempted. I don't know that I feel very confident in what's about to happen, but we'll be here, man, every step of the way,
whether we like it or not.
Yeah, sickos.
In Josh Houtz and Jake Mendel fashion, when we got off the microphone late last week, what was it, Josh? About 15 minutes after?
If that, yeah. You were probably uploading the
The Miami Dolphins parted ways with Danny Crossman and Wes Welker. And Josh, I don't want to like say like I predicted this or because I definitely didn't, but I think in that podcast I even said something along the lines of like the Dolphins announced McDaniel is safe and it's kind of relaxing that they're going to take some time and really evaluate this coaching staff. I wouldn't be surprised if it takes a little time before they announce any moves. And lo and behold, here we have it. So Josh, Danny Crossman, let's start with him. Special teams coordinator is gone. Mike McDaniel had this to say: I'm grateful for Danny's contributions and dedication to the Dolphins over the course of many seasons, as well as the numerous ways he helped me as a coach. Josh, not a surprising move by the Dolphins here, but now that it's happened, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm glad it happened. I kind of was hoping that he'd be that, lack of a better word, scapegoat in the middle of the year where maybe the team could rally behind a move and you could see Mike McDaniel showing some kahunas and maybe he gets a hold of that locker room. But that never happened. So, I mean, we all foresaw this thing happening. I guess the one thing I didn't realize was he said, how he helped him as a head coach. I mean, how long has Danny Crossman been in the NFL where you look at, maybe Mike McDaniel's staff and he was that veteran voice that, was always in his ear, could always help him along. And maybe that's why this dude could stick around so long. So not sad at all to see him go. I think we joked that maybe Darren Rizzi would be that guy. I don't know if there's even any potential there for him to, slip in and become our savior on special teams, but anyone, I'm willing to accept anyone over what we saw with Danny Crossman. So good riddance, Danny Crossman. What are your thoughts, Jake? Anything else you want to add? I can't believe we saw Tyreek Hill. What was it? Was it the last game of the year? When was he back there returning kicks? Like, oh, hey, now we're going to try it. You could just went and reordered the depth chart in Madden and he would have been back there. But this dude.
Bro, the amount of podcasts we did, the Dolphins have so much speed and they know how to break this kickoff rule. And all they did, 25-yard line every single time. And you had to fall butt backwards into Malik Washington because we were cool with just seeing Braxton Berrios wave at us for 17 weeks after all of last season. Josh, I'm really glad you brought up the head coach part because that got my hamster wheel really going here. I'm like, coaching. Well, he's been Miami's special teams coordinator since 2019. He's been the special teams coordinator for a handful of other teams too. Panthers, Bills. Sorry, there's a third one and it's here somewhere. Lions, excuse me. So I forgot this. Crossman was actually promoted to the team's assistant head coach in 2021 under Brian Flores, his final season when everything kind of fell apart. And we're talking about how Brian Flores can't work with people. And I got to thinking, why on earth did this guy get named assistant head coach? What on earth was happening? Why did we approve of this? Because I mean, we're Danny Crossman. We're just sick of him. So kicker Jason Sanders had won 4 AFC Special Teams Player of the Week honors, 3 Special Teams Player of the Month honors, and earned first team All-Pro selection in 2020. On top of that, Jakeem Grant finished second in the NFL in punt return yards, and the Dolphins won the NFL's 2019 Bridgestone Clutch Performance Play of the Year when punter Matt Hawk threw a 1-yard touchdown pass to Jason Sanders in a win over Philadelphia. This is someone who had 15 years of experience as a coordinator, Josh. And my question is simple. What happened? Like there was Matt Hawk throwing touchdown passes. Like the special teams was like, when you look at that 2019 and the 2020 Dolphins and why they're winning games, like everyone loves to go like, Tua at quarterback, like winning, like the Dolphins were a well-rounded team. And I have a hard time believing that, but the numbers speak for themselves. They were solid on special teams. They were getting yards in special teams, especially with people like Jakeem Grant. You were making all your kicks, and shout out Jason Sanders. I think 2 Player of the Month honors this year. But this, I think, man, just is one small spark note in the big picture of the Dolphins had just struggled to be a complete football team because they had success with this guy. He was great with Flores was here. What happened?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm sitting there now, my hamster wheel's going, and I'm like, what did happen? Why is Mike McDaniel, that coach that came in and kind of, maybe became less aggressive in situations like that. We did not do. Have we ever seen it? I don't know what we've seen out of Mike McDaniel, but he is definitely not emptying the bag of tricks that they had. And like you said, man, I still remember Matt Hawk throwing that pass to Sanders, just the creativity they had, and it just seemed like the special teams at that time. I think they were doing other things as well. I mean, it just seemed like you said that he was. A different Danny Crossman at the time. So I don't know what changed. You mentioned all the different accolades for Jason Sanders. Do you think maybe his work with him, maybe getting his mind right, seeing how he's pretty much one of the most, isn't he like the most efficient kicker in Dolphins history? I mean, maybe seeing stuff like that, all the different punters that he's had to work with, maybe that's what they like. But whatever the fall off from Danny Crossman back when he was doing crazy trick plays to now, I'd like to see that study as well.
I wonder, man, and like, I know nothing. I think I should say that as a disclaimer at the start of every podcast. But like, this team is so centered around the offense, right? Like we have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and we're going to put up all these points. And last year we're leading the league in yards per rush. You wonder if maybe is there a scenario where Mike McDaniel maybe tried to keep things bare bone because you're doing these trick plays when you're 1-6, your back's against the wall, and you really are just kind of fighting for your lives. Like, is that? I think that might be part of the issue with the Dolphins. And I want to talk about that more with Wes Welker, where it's like you're just kind of trying to play for the next play instead of like, we got to be out there with a level of urgency. And that's something I think we talked a lot about during when Tua was gone. Like, Tua was the urgency for this offense when he came back, but when he wasn't there, man, like for a complete team, you just lacked that firepower, it seemed like.
It really did. I don't know. Were you surprised by the Wes Welker? I mean, it kind of seemed like, once the dominoes start to fall, I know some people are saying, you really haven't seen a receiver step up. You saw Tyreek Hill step back this year, things like that. I would just want to know what the situation was, the relationship in that room, right? What's Tyreek Hill, if he's showing up late, what's Wes Welker doing? Is he in his ear chirping him out, or is he, dapping him up? Let's keep going. We're friends, buddy type thing. So, intrigued to see who comes up in that place. But those are two moves that Danny Crossman, Wes Welker, you need to see more out of both those units. Even the wide receivers, when you have those big names like a Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, it wasn't until late in the year we saw Malik Washington flourish, where it was the first guy that stepped up where you're like, okay, we're seeing some promise out of one of these guys. I mean, Eric Ezukanma's been locked in a box since he's been drafted.
I also want to thank Wes for his investment here. McDaniel said in that release, this was not a decision I came to lately, but as I've evaluated the season in areas where we must improve, I believe that change is needed and am motivated to do what is best for the team as we move forward. Josh, I didn't listen to it, but I saw people tweeting about the Joe Rose show, and Joe was giving some insight along the lines of Wes was kind of an old head. He was a hard ass. And that got me thinking, like, was he fired because he was a hard ass? And then I think about Mike McDaniel's quotes where he's saying, like, I could find people till I'm blue in the face. I can yell. Like, there was indications where Mike McDaniel was saying, like, I was trying to be like a hard ass coach. So what's happening here? Danny Crossman, I think, is another guy who fits that hard ass mold. Is this like, again? I'm super assuming here. This is the offseason, man. This is all we have time to do. Is Mike McDaniel leaning more into being like buddy? Like, if we're talking about how often we find people and it didn't work, and you're screaming at people and it didn't work, and we thought this was a player's coach, like a buddy, just like a nerdy, goofy pal. Like, if he's coming out and saying, man, I tried all these things. And then you fire two guys that based on their history. And I mean, man, you listen to one Crossman interview, that dude sounds angry all the freaking time. But is this Miami, like Mike McDaniel's desperate last attempt? Is he just gonna crawl back like hands and knees, please guys play for me? Is that how this is unfolding? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, and it might be. And I like the way you said it, man. Before every pod, we should come on here and say we don't know anything. We really don't know anything. But when you think about Mike McDaniel, his coaching style, and now, you mentioned it, Wes Welker. If it's true that he was a hard ass, I mean, that could absolutely be why. It's Wes Welker or Tyreek Hill, we got to mend defenses. Or even still, you're a head coach and you got your assistants going out there chewing players out, maybe doing what you should be doing as a head coach. I don't know how that looks either. So there's a lot of theories, conspiracy theories we can come up with. But I am very intrigued to hear more of this because there was definitely something there, right? They had Odell Beckham Jr., Tyreek Hill, two older guys. If they butt heads with Wes Welker, what happened there? What was the relationship with Mike McDaniel as well? I mean, there's just so much, and it just seems like we're sitting here talking about almost like a soap opera, right? Whereas I mean, I guess that is what football is, though. But this just seems
It
like
is.
you bring a Tyreek Hill in, you bring Odell Beckham Jr. in that soap opera, then it becomes a little bit more of a little bit more crazy.
I think it's people saw this as like a scapegoat. I don't know if I'd
I
go
try to
that.
make that joke. I try to make that joke.
Wes Welker is such a name, right? Super Bowl champion, started in Miami, studded with the Patriots, studded in Denver. Like, and you just look at like Malik Washington steps in and does awesome, but you also have Odell Beckham Jr. You have Eric Ezukama, who was Miami's first offensive draft pick of the Mike McDaniel era, strangely enough, in the 4th round of the 2020 draft. No development there. You had guys like Chase Claypool, Robbie Chosen. Sorry to be throwing shots at you here, Josh, but like, I don't know if it's just like a scapegoat when like that development hasn't been there. And we have so many scenarios where guys aren't running the right routes. And it just confuses me if we have Tyreek Hill saying like, I didn't practice hard enough and that's why I dropped these balls. And then he comes back and has a good game. And it's like, see, this is what happens when I practice. What is getting rid of the, how are you going to make him practice more if you got rid of the hard ass?
Yeah, bring in another hard ass, I guess. But I think most of the people are assuming they're going to like hire within offensive assistant. Max McCaffrey is the name that's going around, Christian McCaffrey's brother. But yeah, if you get rid of a guy that, is the hard ass, who's going to be the define, the authority figure? I mean, I don't know. That's what you hope that you can finally see from Mike McDaniel, him kind of take over control of this thing. But I don't know, man. It seems like things are just spiraling out of control. And you mentioned the Eric Ezukama thing. A lot of people are saying, his development, maybe there was something there, but he did come out then, and it's social media, right? You're going to go out there and thank your a former coordinator, coach, or whatever, but it didn't seem like there was any animosity there. So I don't know, man. I don't think it's a scapegoat thing. I don't think that anybody can say or truly say what Wes Welker was in charge of as far as the receivers, right? Is he at fault for Tyreek Hill missing those routes? Is it Tyreek Hill's fault for not getting, I don't know, but I'm okay with him going. Intrigued to see who steps up in his absence, and intrigued to see where Wes Welker goes, right? You mentioned it, man. He's a name. He's that big figure. Probably going to end up in New England, but wish him all the best.
Josh, before we take off here, I wanted to play a quick game of should they stay or should they go? I mean, kind of the theme of this podcast is just things we're going to be doing through the off season, and this is something we started to talk about. But as the weeks go along, we're going to learn more about these players and what they want to do in the future. So we got an update on Terron Armstead here. He penned a letter on Instagram saying that year 12 is in the books. I can't express how grateful I am for this game and all the opportunities, relationships, moments, and memories it has created. To every fan and supporter, I love and appreciate you, excuse me. That's all for now. Stay tuned. Josh, what's the gut say?
It's that little emoji that's sending me, the little like teary face, like that's all for now. Stay tuned. So I don't know, man. This is the same guy that, was chilling on the bench. I think he even said like he couldn't feel his leg or something like that. Like I feel like at some point his body's just going to tell him to hang it up. But I mean, I think I said I'd like to see him come back and, piece it together, try to make it work. But I'm all in on Patrick Paul. So it sounds to me like he might be gone from Miami, maybe even retiring. What was your thoughts, Jake? And do you want him back in Miami? I mean, I don't want to say he's a progress stopper, but I feel like Patrick Paul, it's time for him to let his wings go and see what he can do.
It's so weird. It's so weird. And this is why we can argue about sports forever. This is why it's so great. We want to say goodbye, Josh, to the people are going to. He was the 3rd highest graded Pro Football Focus tackle. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I got some other numbers here too. His 821 snaps of Miami's 1,138 total offensive snaps is the most he's played since joining the Dolphins. The oldest he's been in Miami is the most snaps he's played, and injury prone. He also appeared in 15 games, allowed 3 sacks and 3 penalties. He did allow just 1 sack in each of the previous 2 seasons. One of those years, 585 snaps, 753 snaps in 2022. This definitively was his best season with the Miami Dolphins. There is no question about it. At 33 years old, Armstead has a salary cap hit of roughly $23 million and a dead cap money number, if he was cut, of $18.5 million if he was released before June 1. That cap hit goes down to just under $8 million, with about $15 million in savings if designated as a post-June 1 cut, according to Over the Cap. They restructured this contract last offseason, and this kind of seemed like Miami's out, right? He signed a 5-year deal, Josh, in 2022. That restructure where you can cut him as a post-June 1st salary cap hit and just take 8 mil while having 15 million savings. That seemed like Miami's like way of relief when they're about 11 million over the cap currently. The final 2 games of the season were his worst 2 games of the season. I think we should move on from Terron Armstead.
You had me in the first half. I'm sitting here thinking, dude, I want him back now. Like, I was ready to run through a wall. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I feel like if he comes back, I'll be more than happy. But you mentioned it, man, with the salary cap situations. Again, Patrick Paul looked promising. I could see why the Dolphins would let him go. But at the same time, man, is there any sort of loyalty from Mike McDaniel and them? Like, okay, you went out there, you busted your ass. You were supposed to, get season-ending surgery one year, and you played through the entire year. You've been our most consistent offensive lineman. Do they just bring him back just to, you want one more year? You can come here and play. I don't know, but that salary cap situation is definitely going to make it murky, right?
I genuinely think that Josh might be like the deepest part of the conversation. Dude, like Armstead, anchor, awesome left tackle. He's been incredible since he's joined in the NFL. He's a rapper too. Like this is a prideful man, made a butt ton of money. But man, are you telling me like 33 years old, you talk about how much he loves the game, and when he's out there, he's playing at such a high level, 12 years in the books. And that money, you think he's going to leave that much money on the table? I can kind of see him approaching the situation of, I understand I'm getting older, but I did play the most snaps I did in my career with the Dolphins last year. And $23 million is a lot of money. And I do have this guy I'm working well with, Patrick Paul, who, we're going to keep the theme of I'm the old vet and I'm taking him under my wing and I'm helping him grow. I'm helping him be that next guy. And I'm not trying to say this in like Armstead's trying to like mess over the Dolphins or anything like that. But man, like the story is there to kind of justify, like, let's run it back again. And with you, I'm not going to be super mad about it, but I think where the Dolphins are, it might just be best to kind of turn the page, which makes no sense. It's crazy pills when you consider like we're all complaining how the Dolphins offensive line is terrible and we want to get rid of who's arguably the best player on it. It's very weird.
That's so Dolphins. That's basically where we're at. That's so Dolphins. Bring him back if we can. Don't if we. I'm good either way, man.
I had Calais Campbell here. I think that's someone we've talked about a little bit, so I'm going to punt on him. I wanted to go to Javon Holland. I'm wrong about most things, but after Greer's conversation or Greer's quote, I think that kind of sealed the door. I kind of saw Javon Holland as out the door. He said, yeah, we've had conversations throughout the summer with Jevon and his agent. Javon's been a good player here. Watched him grow both on and off the field as a person. You guys have gotten to see his personality here too. We put those on hold once the season started, talking about the contract conversations. Both sides agreed, let's just focus on him, focus on the year. And Josh, he focused on the year all right. First season with 0 interceptions, career low 4 passes defended, career low 62 tackles. Compare that to his rookie season, 2 interceptions, 10 passes defended, 2.5 sacks, 7 quarterback hits. Very, very weird roller coaster for Javon Holland.
Yeah, and I think I'm right there as far as a fan. Like, I think it was like week 4 or 5. I was really late at night, 2, 3 in the morning. Pay the snowman, Dolphins. The Dolphins have no safeties. Pay snowman. Ever since then, dude, absolutely. He was been cheeks. It's almost like he was making business decisions. He was, whether it was, not being physical enough, trying to make tackles, giving up plays and coverage, whatever it was. It just wasn't the Javon Holland that we thought we were getting. And, in a contract year, you hope to see more out of him. So like you mentioned, man, I think it's good riddance for him. He also has his podcast with Cam Wolf. And I think they asked him, I wish I had the quote, but it was like, I don't care. Yeah, you have the quote. Okay. Yeah. Cause it just seemed like that just rubbed me the wrong way. You've been here this long and you don't even really care if you stick around with the team that drafted you. It seems like he already has 1 foot out of the door. So I'll make sure I make a video of me kicking rocks sooner than later.
We should. We got to make a video of kicking rocks. Oh, I'm so down for that. The podcast. Jevon wants to focus on the season. We agreed we're going to put off salary talks. Player empowerment era, man. People can do whatever they want. If I'm lining up to get paid a massive contract, I don't know if I'm starting a podcast in the middle of the season. We saw Tyreek Hill when the Dolphins season, I might have been, when he had his podcast, we saw like when things started going downhill, he stopped doing the podcast. The fact that Javon Holland started doing the podcast and he can do it. And I'm not saying he can not get paid without it, but man, like first career with 0 interceptions, career low 4 passes defended, career low 62 tackles, career high 1 podcast. And on that podcast, he said, I do want to stay in Miami, but I'm also pretty open to the possibility of being somewhere. I wouldn't hate the idea of coming back. I wouldn't hate the idea of leaving. I'm really not stressed about anything. Like whatever ends up happening, it's happened for a reason. Go ahead. Sorry.
I just gotta say, we gotta remind ourselves. Like I'm 38. I'm almost 38, so I'm much older than you. But like you hear these younger, and they are younger players, but you hear that and you're just like, come on, man, that's not what you want to hear.
That's not. Yeah, and people can say whatever they want. They can feel however they want, man. But like some sort of like urgency in anything, like just the casual level of it, and and I do wonder too, man. Like, did Vic ruin his confidence? Maybe. Like, look, his rookie season, 2 interceptions, 10 passes defended, 2.5 sacks, career high 7 QB hits. People misunderstood how Jevon was used in Vic Fangio's system because Jevon actually moved around quite a bit. They actually Fangio was using him well. He was playing really well last year. And when he left and kind of talked about the culture in Miami, you wonder if that did something to Jevon or Josh. I'd even argue that his first season, Brian Flores, they're a lot more aggressive. They're going to be a lot more creative. Where this year, you don't have any depth at safety. There was nobody else back there where it had to be Jevon. And I'm not using that to kind of justify things, but it wasn't this scenario where you had this unknown rookie safety who can just come in and his hair's just flat out on fire from the start.
Yeah, and I know he joked. I think I made a joke about Jordan Poyer, and Javon Holland even responded to me like, man, cool down. And it's like, dude, okay, so you're out there. You do have Javon Holland, then next to him, he does have Jordan Poyer. What do you have? Marcus May looking, he didn't look solid, but, they had no one next to him.
Because he got an interception on the next team. Let's forget anything else he did, but he got an interception.
Yeah, I remember someone asked me, do we want Marcus May? I was like, no, you don't want him. And then that next weekend, or like 2 weeks later, he had an interception. I'm like, this dude's got to be DMing me. So, yeah, I feel like he's gone. I feel like I'll probably link up with Brian Flores if Flores gets a head coaching job. Like, can't you just see that being his guy and then going on to have this great career, whatever it is. But Javon Holland, man, he just seems like he doesn't care. I don't know that he's gonna get that crazy contract that maybe he once thought. I think a lot of the Pro Football Focus and those top free agents, he was at the top of that list, not even for safety, just player overall. So when you see him go out there in this contract year, when you see him kind of like you mentioned, almost fall off since the Brian Flores and even Josh Boyer, right? Once they left, he kind of, maybe it was a different system. They asked more out of him. You moved him around, whatever it was. He just wasn't the same player. So good riddance, Javon Holland. Wish it would have worked out, but no, Dolphins have a massive, massive need at safety.
There is some, like he's always been pretty open. Like you can tweet at him and there's a chance you'll get a response. And I think he does a good job of kind of putting like, dude, there are football maniacs. There are maniacs who are like, and I do think like he does a good job of like, if someone's like just being like a insane person talking football, like I think he does a good job of checking people. I don't think this is, do you think this conversation goes into that? I just genuinely think it's like, doesn't really care. He's, it's ready to kind of move on. And it just I don't know, man. It just kind of seems like I wouldn't put this in a hater category, and I just kind of wanted to check the hater card to see if you felt the same way.
You said you would put it in the hater category?
I don't think I'd put this as like being like an insane fan, like, oh, you let us down, you stink or anything. Like it's just kind of.
It's almost like he's like, F you, I'm out, and we're just like, okay, cool, man. Like, good luck, I guess. Right? That's pretty much it. So, again, that was a player, though, a couple of years ago, you would have said, okay, this guy's going to be on our defense for many, many years to come. And, again, it didn't work out for whatever reason. But it's good to know that now instead of paying him and seeing that he can't do it in a Vic Fangio defense, seeing that he might, take a step back in an Anthony Weaver defense. Better to see it now than after you pay him all that money like typical Dolphins would have done any other time.
Last note I have, Josh, and we're going to wrap this up. There are the five teams with the least amount of cap space: Falcons, Dolphins, Seahawks, Browns, and Saints. All missed the playoffs. I'm going to shoot my shot. Probably going to get it wrong. Where does Javon Holland land? Well, the New England Patriots have $120 million in cap space. They just signed Mike Vrabel, and that's going to be a podcast we're going to have to talk about soon. Tua being undefeated against the Patriots and winless against Vrabel. That we might have to do. I think that should be a cat conversation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He'll have a lot to say about that, and it's so Dolphins, right? That's that guy that all year, the Dolphins were struggling. Hey, we can bring in Mike Vrabel. He'll get us over the hump. He's that that authority figure, that guy that can take this in, and now he's in New England. So, yeah, I'm not even gonna throw out a name. I think if the Pats have that money. They can bring in a guy like Javon Holland, then he has that whole thing of trying to get back at the Dolphins his whole career. And you got Mike Vrabel, who, let's be honest, man, he's been a thorn in our side since before he went to Tennessee. So yeah, man, AFC's got a whole lot more interesting, and Javon Holland in New England, I'd hate to see it, but I won't be against it or indifferent.
For those who have just started to stumble upon the podcast, we not only appreciate you listening, but I just want to share, we do keep the podcast going year round. During the season, it's a little easier. Like, game happened, we can recap a game. There's a game coming up, let's talk about it. During the off season, we're going to try to stick minimum 2 shows a week. You can find those shows Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us there. And if you have any issues, jmendel94 on Twitter, Houtz on Twitter, we're on Blue Sky. Always feel free to reach out to us. We also have a video edition of this podcast. You can find that on the 560 WQM YouTube channel. And those views have been going up, it seems, show after show. So shout out everyone who's joining us there. People join and comment, just great show, guys. Love seeing you guys. I mean, that means the world to me. I mean, the Dolphins make me miserable, and some of the fans do too, but then the ones like that, I mean, it just makes it all worth it. So thank you all so much for listening. We're going to try to be consistent, but the best way to be on top of things when a new show drops is subscribe to the show. So thank you all so much for joining Another Dolphins podcast. We are hoping you have a wonderful week. We will be back sometime this week, talk about whatever's happening in the land of Dolphins. But until then, fins up.
Fins up.